Hi, and happy Wednesday. If you're watching this, I am assuming that you're sticking it out, going to stay in the class. I've really enjoyed watching all of your intro videos. I found them super interesting. I just love being able to put the face to the name. So I want to spend just a short period of time talking about the rhetorical analysis, which will be the first formal assignment that you're going to be drafting on. If you've read through everything, then you have a good sense, I hope, of what will be coming your way, which is every paper will work its way through at least 2 drafts, sometimes more. Okay, this should have been clarified on the syllabus as well. I will give you feedback on every rough draft. So that you have some sense of what you need to work on what's working, on what's not working. Since our turnaround time is so fast, I will attempt to get those back to you within a day, certainly no more than 2 days. If it turns out, say I get tied up or something's happening and I can't get them back to you in enough time for you to revise, then I will push the date, the due date for the revision. Okay, so back to the rhetorical analysis. We begin argument by looking at what other people have to say. Okay, so examining the structure, and I mentioned this briefly in the last video. So you look at an argument, and the first thing that you should say is, so what? What is the writer's purpose? Why is he writing this? What does he want me to think or believe or accept? And what does he think or believe or accept? So the first thing to identify is the writer's claim or his purpose. So that's the P in the PAPL that I mentioned briefly and asked you to review. The purpose of the entire piece. So you should be able to look through in an argument and actually hear the writer's voice. All right. That's not a bad thing. All right. The purpose of audience is to establish a presence as a writer, to own the position that you're taking, and then to work your way through all of the rest of the appeals. I posted a video on ethos, pathos, and logos that I want you to watch. All right. It's inside the rhetorical analysis module. And it's very beneficial in terms of thinking about what we do automatically when we argue. Okay, we establish ethos, credibility. Okay, I'm not going to believe you if you've done nothing but lie to me ever since I met you. Even if that thing that you're telling me right now is truthful, I won't buy it if everything that you've told me up until that day has not been truthful. Okay, ethos is credibility in that regard. Ethos is also credibility in establishing your authority on a subject. Okay, so you might be a doctor and someone might say, oh, hey, you know what, I've been having this problem with my, I don't know, my throat. Okay, my throat's really sore, whatever it might be, or you have something going on. But then you find out that the doctor to whom you've been appealing is actually, let's say, a psychiatrist. So not really dealing with maladies of the throat, rather maladies of the mind. Not to say that he or she hasn't, gone through medical school and might be able to help you, but you're probably not going to appeal to an authority that is not in fact an authority in that particular discipline, domain, or subject matter. Okay, so you might be a fantastic scholar in psychology, say, but then I'm probably not going to look to you for your expertise in biomedical engineering. All right, so make sure that when you're appealing to someone's authority, their ethos, or you're establishing that you do so by drawing from credible source material. As a writer, it's your job to make sure that you're pulling from places and people who are well respected in the field. The way that you build credibility is to use others who have built credibility. So we start by looking at the credibility of the source you're looking at, the writer who's producing it. Does he or she have any ulterior motives? Okay, arguably everybody does. Obviously they're trying to push some point of view. But so we look at ethos. Then we look at pathos. What kind of emotional appeals are being promoted by this argument? Is an argument driven entirely by emotional appeals? Because then, we want to examine that. We don't want something that's built primarily on or exclusively on emotion, often very effective in terms of persuading an audience, but not logically sound and not a good, strong way to present an argument. We like to use pathos or emotion to build some bridges to connect with the reader. It's a very powerful tool, but you don't want to rely exclusively on that. And then finally, and obviously one of the most important components is logos or logic. Does it make sense? Does it stand to reason? Has the argument been put together in a way that quite simply makes sense? So you examine, you look for these pieces when you're looking at the evidence that's provided in an argument. So as you read through all of these articles, I want you to, in your mind, think a little bit about what's happening. Okay, what's the writer trying to get you to think about? Not do you agree or disagree with what he or she has said, but what's he trying to do? Like, is he trying to get you to be sympathetic? How is he doing that? Is it through his language? Is it through the evidence? Is the argument built inductively, or does it move backwards deductively? How is it put together? So that's what you're analyzing in this first exercise, this first assignment. Okay, so you are going to take a look at the purpose. Why is he writing it? You're going to say, for whom is this article being written? Okay, if it appears in the New York Times, what do you know about the readers of the New York Times? Okay, just because an article is written about someone or something doesn't mean that that's the intended audience. All right, for example, I could read an article about children and children's behavior, and the target audience, if I read it in Parents Magazine, would not be children. The article's about children, but it's actually designed for parents of children. Okay, so think about it that way. If I read an article that appears in Sports Illustrated, who's the target audience of Sports Illustrated? If that article happens to be about animals, it doesn't mean that the target audience is animal lovers. It's whoever's got access to that particular article, and in all likelihood, it would be readers of Sports Illustrated, for example. The next piece is the presentation. Is it an op-ed? Most of the articles I've posted for you are op-ed. What does that mean? Okay, what do you know? Do a little bit of research. What's an op-ed piece? Like what drives those types of arguments? All right, they're typically not covering all facets of an argument. They're not really supposed to. So you think about the presentation, the design, the expectations. The E in PAPL is the evidence. So what are those appeals being used? Where do you see ethos, pathos, logos? You don't have to use that language, by the way. You can just talk about how the author builds credibility, how he or she appeals to emotions, where in the argument the logic is apparent. Those are the types of examinations and conversations that you want to have on the page. That is, how does he or she do this? And then the final piece of the PAPL would be the L, and that is the language, the tone. Think about how you know a little bit about someone and what they're saying based on the words they use, the way they organize that language. Is it effective? Are they using a lot of metaphors? Some people find that very appealing. Other people find it a little bit off-putting. Have they used sarcasm? Sarcasm can be incredibly powerful, or it can just fail miserably if it's not done well. So think a little bit about that. And then, of course, each of those pieces interconnects. So the language should be appropriate for the presentation, which should be appropriate for the audience. That's how you decide and analyze how strong an argument is, how strong a piece of writing is. All right. So I just want you to think about this, because putting all of this on this side of the argument, you examining and evaluating another person's writing, is ultimately going to make you a stronger presenter of argument as well. All right. So as you prep for this, go through, first step, read all of the articles. Okay. They're not very long. I want you to annotate them. And that means take notes, take a look, see what stands out, what strikes you as odd or effective or ineffective, and just kind of give yourself a little conversation with the page personally, okay? Read through it. What's the author's purpose? How's he getting that point across? Is it confusing? If it's hard to follow, then it's probably not going to be very effective. Is it for a very specific audience? That's okay if it is, but if you're not a member of that audience, then that article might not work as a reader for you. Okay, so think about some of those pieces and components. And then remember this, your job is not, absolutely not, to agree or disagree with the content of the article. Okay, so if you read the piece about opioids, and you're looking at that, or about recovery and about addiction, whatever it might be, maybe you disagree entirely with the author. I don't care. I don't want to know if you agree or disagree. I just want to know, how well did he present that point of view. That's your goal, is to say, okay, this is a really strong piece of writing. Even if you vehemently disagree, you have to be able to point to the pieces in that presentation that are strong or weak, or both in either case. Okay, so read all the articles, annotate, take notes, then choose the one that most appeals to you. Not necessarily, again, because of content, but because you think you have something to say about it, that the presentation is unique, that it's effective, or it's utterly ineffective, and you'll have a good body of information, or I guess material to present about that particular piece. So think about that as you're reading through each of those. Don't just choose the first one, and don't go strictly by subject material, because it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you agree or disagree with. Well, it definitely shouldn't be, but it doesn't have to be something that you're interested in, is what I really should say. There are a lot of guidelines that I've posted inside the rhetorical analysis module. Take a look at those. The first thing I'm seeing is a rough draft. I just want to see what you can do. All right, but there are some guidelines to follow. Number one, in the opening, you have to give the author's name, the title of the article. You might want to reference the source. In other words, where was it originally published? You might, as you're evaluating it, move through a brief summary of it, but your goal is not to merely summarize it. You want to objectively analyze what you're reading, okay? Think about it like a review of sorts, right? So you could go see a concert and really not care a lot for the artist, say, but you might acknowledge what he did well. Okay, maybe this artist puts on a heck of a show, just a great performer, or maybe the audio was especially effective, the inclusion of the crowd, whatever. You're reviewing those things that you can, not saying that you like his or her type of music or whatever he's saying or singing or writing about, but it gives you that objectivity so that you're not arguing with the content, but rather the presentation. So think a lot about that as you review each of those pieces, and then choose accordingly. So the opening, you're mentioning the author, the title, brief summary, and then you're moving into some key points. You can't analyze, and I don't expect you to analyze every component of the article that you're evaluating, but I want you to hit some of those high points. Okay, so if you go through and you find something particularly powerful, you want to examine the construction of the argument, what makes it work. I want you to use specific examples from the text. Okay, so if you find a phrase that's particularly powerful, then you want to point to that, and you want to say what's present. You want to show what's present, or write about the fact that it's inside the article. But more importantly, you want to talk about what its effect is. Gosh, I can't talk tonight. Sorry, too hot out. Okay, so think about that. You're just moving through not just what's there, but why you think that author placed it there, and what the effect of that is on the reader. All right, so that's what I want you to begin thinking about. I will post again tomorrow. I may even go back and see. I've taught this online a few years. I'll see what I had to say about this. Maybe in years past. Maybe I said it differently. Maybe I said it better. Quite likely. Maybe not my best night, I suppose. Okay, if you have any questions, as always, please don't hesitate to send me an email or post it in the Muddy Points. I love when you do that, because that means everybody gets the advantage of that. Your rough draft is coming in this weekend, okay? I think I have it slated for Friday. I might push that to Saturday for you, because I want to have a little more time to just kind of get you into that mode of writing. So I can talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. So I may move that by one day, just to give you a little more time to shape that draft up. You're welcome to turn it in whenever you like. The Dropbox is open, but I'll that'll give me a chance to take a look at them before the finals.